Hello, Daryl. Welcome to Effortless Being, where it takes no effort just to be. Good to see you again.
Yes, you too. Yeah. How you
So, what?
keeping?
Yeah, I'm keeping pretty good. Things are pretty alive, moving. And that's why I wanted to ask you, what's alive for you these days?
Um, yeah, just continuing, yeah, worldly life continues. Nothing that I can think of currently. But yeah,
Yeah,
had a
last
nice
we
Easter
talked.
weekend with the family.
Yeah, and a nice Easter. What?
Yeah.
Last we talked, you were going on vacation. I think you're going on vacation or something. Did you go? Did you have a nice vacation? Or?
Yes, yeah. That so I live near Cape Town and we went up to the Kruger Park, which is a sort of bushveld area where the animals are and that. So we spent
Oh,
2 weeks up there. Yeah.
oh, very lovely. Nice being with the
Yeah.
animals out in nature.
Yeah, it's not for everyone, but we love it, and we I try and go at least once a year.
Hmm.
Uh, I think in America you call it safari. We call it going to the bush.
I like that. That's pretty good. Yeah, we do call it safari, but I like how you said it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
pretty good.
Uh, and yourself, on were you on a cruise or a cruise ship or what?
Yes, I was
Oh
on a
yeah.
cruise ship. It was Abraham Hicks event where they do it's like law of attraction kind of thing.
Oh,
I had been
okay.
into that before self-realization, and my wife really likes to go on cruises, so I was like, okay, I'll go on a cruise.
Okay.
But yeah, I had some neat experiences actually on the cruise talking to some people on the cruise. A lot of those people on the cruise, I would say, that are in that realm, like that law of attraction crowd, a lot of them are like in that I am creator consciousness that they're in.
Yeah.
So they feel, they feel empowered, like they can create their own reality, that, that their thoughts, turn to things. And as long as they
Yes.
only think about, what they want, that's all that reality's, going to be. So I was able to, have some conversations, with them, and I had a few on there where they did realize the true nature on the ship when I got into some
Okay.
conversations. If you hear some of my other interviews, I take a deeper dive into that. But what is your feeling on all this on this whole manifestation thing?
Yeah, I've never really kind of been drawn to it.
Mhm.
Mainly for one of the reasons is how would you know what you want, or how would you know what's best for you, kind of thing. So um, I think from a certain perspective, manifestation uh, is real and is beneficial.
Mhm.
But from the perspective of a sort of higher self, it's trying to almost manipulate what is going to happen in any case. So it kind of it's a little bit maybe even self-defeating in a way. So. For me, a lot of things have happened that I could never have possibly conceived of, So, how would we know what is best for us, So that's probably my only comment. But I mean, we all want to live in a world where things run smoothly and and we get the things we want.
Mhm.
So I'm not going to say I'm any different in that respect.
That's true. Yeah, I was just trying to think from a non-duality perspective, with manifestation, we know that everything's just happening, and from the essence of what we truly are as the infinite being, having a human experience from the infinite being's perspective, everything's just happening automatically through form for no one because there's no person here. I mean, I've seen through that there's no person here and there's no doer here from a
Yeah.
non-duality perspective. That really resonates with me because that's my direct experiences is that.
Yes. Yes.
But at the same
Yeah.
time, being intentional, about what we want, and then there's that thing of free will. So how do you think that all plays in? Like, what would you say? What would you say? Like the free will to, intentionally manifesting something, and then the non-dual perspective in your direct experience. How would you maybe say something about that?
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of those paradoxes, and there are many of them. So ultimately, from the absolute perspective, there is no free will. Everything is the manifestation of God or Source or something, and we're just part of that manifestation. But from the personal perspective, I mean, there's most definitely a feeling that we are doing things and creating things. So it's one of those situations where they kind of are both true. There's yeah, so from the personal perspective, one can manifest and create, but from a higher perspective, it's not actually working like that.
Yeah, it's a good,
So
it's a good way to
yeah,
explain it.
so that's yeah, so that's my take on it.
Because it's almost like there's, I mean, from my direct experience, what I'm seeing is I just see everything, arising. Like I see forms arising, thoughts arising, body sensations arising, like energy. It's almost like energy coming through, like different feelings. There's just like energy movements coming through this space of beingness, this impersonal space of beingness that that I'm being. Like I'm just being, right? I can't stop being now.
Yeah,
Like I'm just being. And in this beingness, it's full. It feels really full here in this space. It
yeah,
feels whole, complete. It doesn't need anything. And if I just direct my attention to this beingness, this impersonal beingness, and I ask it, what do you need? I mean, it doesn't need, it's already full. It's complete. So, and then, but like you said, but then you're having this human experience, right? We're still, there's still like a body here moving around
yeah,
that some identity still, with the body, as far as, it's here and I could use it as a vehicle to get around, not so much as, I am just my body, but
yeah,
this
that's
space,
right.
yeah, I'm like this whole space of
Yes,
beingness
yeah,
that the body's in, like all these bodies are in. It's almost like I can be all the bodies because I'm consciousness itself. So, it's all sitting in this space, this stillness, like this empty space of beingness. And it's just like coming up, and then
yeah,
it's just collapsing. Like a lot of people use like the ocean, like you have it's like the infinite ocean, and
yeah.
and the waves are on top. Any thoughts on that or anything come to you?
Yeah, so what comes to me is I definitely have preferences.
Hmm.
So I think it's more so from the personal, the individual always has preferences. I mean, I'd rather be in happiness or bliss than in pain.
Hmm.
So pleasure, we'd always choose pleasure over pain. But the difference is that there is less of attachment, or I mean, ideally no attachment to the preference. So one could have a preference that things would work out a certain way. So from a manifesting perspective, you could say that's my preference. But I think a lot of the time with manifestation is there's an attachment to it, and if you're attached to an outcome, then there's less likelihood of that outcome actually. You're kind of pushing it away.
You,
So
you think if you're attached to
yeah,
the outcome, you think you're back in the story, you're back in the character mode, would you
yes.
say?
Well, if you're attached, you're coming from lack,
Mhm.
and so you can't. If you're creating from lack, it's not very effective. Whereas if you're creating from completeness or fullness, then it's more likely to. I mean, it's quite interesting because it also brings up the whole concept of time. So is time real or is time not real? It's the
Yeah.
kind of it's the same actually.
Mhm.
So time is most definitely real from the personal perspective, but from as you go higher, time is less real, you could say. And from the absolute perspective, there's no time. There's just the timeless now. But yeah, I would say definitely uh, it's attachment to preferences, and I think that's the problem. And a lot of people try and manifest from lack as opposed to from completeness. Yeah.
How about you in your everyday life? Like, how would you say you manifest?
Yeah, so especially starting, I've started a few new businesses. I'm not a big businessman by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm just in that period in my life where I've kind of started a few new things, and it hasn't always worked according to plan. There's there are times when I would like it to have been easier.
Hmm.
So one has to say, where's your life been orchestrated from? Am I the kind of orchestrator of my life, or does that happen at a soul level? Because at a soul level, if your soul, which is a higher aspect of oneself, if that has an intention to become truth or to see truth clearly, sometimes getting what you want is not not in your interest, and then you'll never get it. Doesn't matter how much you manifest.
Hmm.
So yeah, so that is always the thing. Sometimes a little bit of pain and hardship is actually good for one. So even though one can wake up to the reality that we are not this physical mind body here, um, that's almost the beginning of the journey. So there's, we are complete, but we can always be more complete.
More more complete than complete.
Um,
What's
and that's
between
the soul
complete?
journey or the source journey. The journey of source, I would imagine, I could never, how could I ever know? But is a movement from completeness to completeness,
Yeah,
to
what's
ever expanding more complete.
so what's between complete and not complete?
Well, yeah, that's the thing is I suppose it's always perfect, I love the saying the universe doesn't make mistakes. It's a kind
Mm,
of a system that's perfect and within itself, it's perfect. There's even though from a lower level one sees just the imperfections, but if gets a high enough view, like standing on top of a mountain, then you see the perfectness of the whole thing. So it only appears not problems are only from a low level. I actually read somewhere really good. I think it was they were talking about Rembrandt the painter, and if you go up close to a Rembrandt, there's lots of black and in his paintings.
mhm.
And but then if you look close, you're seeing black, you're seeing darkness. But if you stand back, then it all comes into its glory, or you can now see the full picture. And the black is you need the black in the painting to have the contrast for the light or for the beauty. So
Love that.
yeah, yeah. If we could only live to learn to live that all the time, but I for my I truly believe the universe is perfect, but that's also these it becomes paradoxical because it can become more perfect or more complex. The perfection and the wholeness can become a more complex perfection and a more complex wholeness. Possibly maybe that's the meaning of life, from a source perspective.
Hmm. Yeah, because what I just said,
Something
and
right with the big stuff first.
yeah, might as well, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I just always go back to direct experience. So like you and I, like we're sitting here, like in this moment, like there's just this moment, right? Or just this now, whatever you want to say, no time, just it's just this. And when I just look right here, right now, to me, everything is like paradise on earth. It's like heaven on earth. I just see everything is full. I don't see any issues or problems here. It's only if you start thinking about it, like, kind of like how I always Sailor Bob. I always like when he said
Yeah.
that. It really
Yeah.
triggered to me, like, what's wrong with right now, unless you think about it. And
Yeah.
because if I'm not in my thoughts, because there's no like I can't see like a separate person, with the story. I've already seen through like Rob the character with the story. I've seen through it, and even the I that's saying I've seen through it is being, there's awareness of that as well. So I mean, so there's really just the full awareness that's here, and it's impersonal. And when I get curious about what that is, and I question what that is, I say, can it get sick?
I think that awareness is ever expanding. So, so when one thinks one is a body mind, your awareness is quite contracted.
Mhm.
And the waking up is the first step out of that, where you realize that you're not your body mind, and your awareness then goes wider. And I think, one can expand that awareness and or have access to ever expanding awareness. And I think it's beyond the limits that we can even comprehend. We can become aware of galaxies and other dimensions. Um,
Has that been your experience?
no, no, that hasn't been my experience. No.
How expansive would you say for yourself?
Um, yeah, so what I call unity consciousness, where I feel that I'm the field, and I feel that the objects of my awareness are part of the field, and there's no real me there. It's just the field. So I don't know. I suspect that sort of I suspect awareness could get a lot bigger than that. And people do have peak experiences. And I think it's quite important to draw the distinction between peak experiences and every. So there's some you can have a really peak experience and know yourself as the infinite and lose all sense of subject object and still not wake up.
Mm.
So I think it's a question of in your everyday life, are you able at will, can you move your awareness into different states? Whereas I think people do get confused with a lot of the time when people have these really expansive states, they peak experiences. It's not one sort of ground of being.
Is this
That's my
something?
I suspect. It's hard
Yeah,
to
is this
talk.
yeah, is this something like if I could stretch out my arms and they're like 50 feet long kind of thing? Like you're experiencing it like everything's like happening with inside you, like this like because you're just seeing, like you said, the field, right? This field of awareness or beingness, of consciousness. And
Yeah,
then
I forget myself.
Mhm,
There's occasionally when I go for a run, I do a bit of jogging,
mhm.
and I suddenly think like if I remember to put my pants on, because you kind of like your body's there's less body consciousness. But do you I can definitely sense and the non-dual nature of reality. And even in my direct experience, I think we might have spoken about this in the last where one uses the senses and you can move into the senses and there's no separation, so in all five senses it's actually a lovely little thing to do and it's available to anyone to experience, even touch, sound's easy for some people. um, and you basically go into that experience. Eventually at some point you lose yourself, and then there's no gap between you and the experience. The experiencer and the experience become one.
Mm.
I don't think that's particularly unusual. Most people just don't recognize it, and maybe
Yeah,
are not able to go there at will.
yeah. Because when I look, there's like if I take away the commentator, you know, what's left? It's just this and this wholeness. Like there's I don't sense any separation, you know, that's here. Like it's all whole. It's if you take away that commentator or that
Yeah,
experiencer, there's no experiencer here.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, I don't see that. Like and doer, I don't see a doer here, like a doer doing it. There's kind of you see through. There's nothing that a separate person is doing.
yeah, yeah. No, I think yeah. I mean, that's people call that the no self, no doer. It
Mhm,
becomes fairly obvious that there's kind of no, it isn't really someone here, and one isn't really doing anything.
mhm,
But at the same time, one lives one's life. So I think if, we are in bodies on the earth, on this plane of existence, and there are probably many more planes that we can't even imagine. Um, so I think that the goal should be to have the full experience on this plane, and that includes all these modes of perception. Uh, so even though what you're saying, it's lovely to be in effortless being or unity consciousness, but it's also quite nice to get into the story as well and physically do things and use one's body. I mean, it's actually quite
yeah.
nice exercising the body and being involved in relationships. And so it's a full, one needs to live a full experience. I've actually recently been reading, I don't know if you're familiar with Ken Wilber.
No, tell me more.
So he's a psychologist and a philosopher, and he's been around for many years. And he came to it from a spiritual perspective. So in his teens and early 20s, he was a meditator and he was really into Zen. And then he transitioned into psychology and he basically came up with integral philosophy, a theory of philosophy, which brings spirituality into psychology.
Mhm,
And what was quite interesting was how he drew the distinction between waking up, growing up, and clearing up. And he says they're all actually independent. In other words, you can be you could have woken up, but you could be quite emotionally, you could be quite underdeveloped, or you could have woken up and you could have a lot of shadow material in your subconscious. So he was saying it's important to become a complete human being. You need to bring all three of those aspects in. You need to wake up, you need to grow up, and you need to clear up. And the clearing up aspect is one shadow, what lies in the subconscious. And he gives experiences of gurus and these like sages from many years ago who were extremely advanced on the waking up. But you know, they've all come with stories of sexual situations with devotees, and some of them, yeah. So emotionally, they were actually very weak. They were just strong. They were just really advanced in the waking up side.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of the time, they had no access to their shadow, their repressed emotions. Um, so that's integral theory or integral philosophy. That's Ken Wilber. Uh, it's quite intellectual. So I don't know how well it helps with waking up.
Hmm.
It is very intellectual, but it, I found it useful. I mean, I didn't read any of his books; they were too long.
Yeah,
But
right.
I listened to a few, and I listened to a bit on YouTube. And I mean, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And I think in our spiritual community, or in a lot of spiritual communities, people, because your shadow, one has no access to it. You don't know that it's there. You know, one we the hidden parts of ourselves we are unaware of. You know, so.
The subconscious is what you're saying.
Yes, yeah,
They
yeah.
haven't been
I think
brought to light.
yeah,
But
Jung
we're
calls
not,
it.
but we're not really the shadow because it's almost like the shadow or even like emotions, shadow, feelings, all of that. That's not like what we are. It's coming up. What we are is this infinite space, this impersonal infinite space of beingness, and it's coming that shadow. I'm not denying that it's there. It's definitely there, and you see
Yeah,
those feelings and emotions. I'm just saying, I'm just not identified with it as you.
yeah. No, I agree, and
Yeah.
that's the whole thing. So if one can be clear enough and just decline the invitation or not identify with it,
Yeah.
but many can't, and so. And it's not a question of one can't identify it or disidentify with it. It's more, it appears that some people have more of a, you could call it a karmic load. It sounds terrible. It sounds like the life, like that victim, you know, life's so unfair. You know, I've got this terrible karmic load and I can't wake up. But it's, you know, we are the impersonal, limitless, infinite being.
Right.
But we also, Daryl Samson with a body. And in that Daryl Samson, that their body, there are energetic frequencies that are there,
Mhm.
um, and you know, which Eckhart or Tolle would call the pain body.
Right.
So one could, you know, one can just not identify with them. That's most certainly something that can happen. But a lot of the time, when someone disidentifies with things, they actually repress it or they suppress it. It's a kind of spiritual bypassing. So you can only disidentify or not, it's not actually, I would say disidentification is spiritual bypassing. But when you don't identify with something, you're doing it because you just know it's not who you are. So that's fine. But if you're doing it because that's not who you know, you don't want to be like that, then
Mhm.
it's a very fine line which I think a lot of us get caught in, you know, so, I mean, I think it would be lovely just to say, no, it doesn't apply. But for a lot of people, it does apply. And I think the way to actually determine that is to, if you're constantly being pulled out of unity consciousness, or if you're in effortless being
Yeah.
and you're permanently being pulled out of it, you know, I mean, that's a sign that, you know, there is something that needs to be dealt with. If you can maintain one's unity consciousness in through work and through everyday life, that's great, you know.
Mm.
But some people can't.
Yeah, I love the way you said that. It is a fine line because we don't want to we want to definitely feel all of our feelings and the emotions. We want to notice them. Even the language that I use, I don't want people to think that I'm identifying, with being the feeling, but rather I'm noticing it, from the essence, from the infinite being, and just the not even knowing it, just being it, being the infinite being. There comes a point where you don't need to know anymore. Like the knowing stops, and you just be, what you are and what you've always been. I mean, all of us right here, right now, are remaining as the pristine infinite being, whether we realize it or not. We're just having this human experience where the mind or the thoughts are coming in telling us that we're not self-realized, that we're not the infinite being, that that we are our thoughts, we are the pain, we are the fear, the thoughts want you to identify with it, almost like because it wants to take our energy, so to speak, into that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but at the same time, like we don't repress or resist our feelings. Like anything can come up in this space of beingness that we are. Everything is welcome to
Yeah.
come. It's all can be here, and it can be looked at. It can be noticed.
It
And
can
when
be
it's
experienced, and yeah,
yeah,
that's when
anything,
one pushes it away. One says that's not part of me.
right?
It's almost, it's more like it's a better thing to say. It's like everything's a part of me,
Yeah,
including that.
yeah, you're everything but no thing. But it's like
Yeah.
this energy. It's like I look at feelings as emotions as like energy passing through this space of consciousness or this field of beingness, that we all are. They're passing through. And sometimes, people are identifying with it and taking it personal, saying, that depression, applies to me, or this sadness applies to me. And then they personalize it. And that's when I
Yeah.
see them suffer. I see the suffering come in once they personalize an
Yes.
emotion or a feeling. But what seems to work, I would say, is being all the feelings come up still, even after self-realization. So anybody listening, you're still going to feel all of the full range of emotions can come into this space of beingness because the mind's going to label this energy, like the ones that are like more towards depression or sadness, they're, like you said, you can actually feel it in your body,
Yeah.
feeling that more constricted feeling when those
Yeah.
energies are coming through. So I can sense when those energies are passing by in this sense of beingness.
Yeah.
But I always know, there's a knowingness or a beingness of what I am. I can't help but be what I
Yes.
am
Yeah.
as the consciousness. So I just kind of notice, what's coming up in this space of beingness without attaching to it. And I could just be
Yeah.
the
I
space. I could be
got a
the space
copy.
for all of
Yeah.
it. What's that?
Sorry, I kind of cut in there. Apologies for
Yeah.
that. But yeah, it's got to pass through, so if you grab hold of it or you identify with it any way, it now
Mhm.
can't pass through and it now becomes part of your energy body. So that's what it's about. The other thing I've noticed is it's almost the opposite. It's not that the emotions are not there after awakening. They can be even they can be a lot more. They can be a lot stronger. In other words, it's because there's no escapism. You can't. Previously, one could escape, whereas I find now, even though I know it's not who I am, the feelings, the sensations can be quite powerful because we're awake enough, or one is awake enough not to try and escape from it. So
Yeah,
and
you
then
want to
it and
feel
then
it.
it
You want to
comes and
really
it goes
feel it,
quickly.
right? Really,
Yeah,
really feel the
yeah,
emotion. Go into it. Say,
that's
come
right.
on,
Yeah.
emotion. Come on, sadness. Let me feel it. Bring it on. Let's go deep into
Yes. Yeah.
it. Almost like
Go
dive
deep
right
into it.
into it.
Yeah.
Because what you are, the presence, the infinite being, the presence that you are will wash over that and absorb it and take it in. It's not, because this consciousness can't be hurt by any emotion or fear or depression. It's because it's love. It's infinite
Yeah.
and it's never
Yeah,
touched.
that's I suppose the alchemy is it gets transmuted. Yeah.
Yes, love that.
The presence
Transmute.
transmutes it.
You can
Yeah.
transmute it into love, like they would,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost
Um,
that inner conviction. You know what I'm talking about? Like that. you know, that inner conviction that you have
Yeah.
in knowing what you are. When you when you feel that presence of what you truly are, you can really hold that space, you know, of
Yes.
beingness. And it's almost like this space of beingness, you know, anything can come into this space of beingness. And like you said, like an alchemist, it can be transformed into love. Anything.
Yeah.
Bring it all in here. And this presence is so powerful, or whatever you want to say, that it can transmute any emotion, any feelings, and they're all welcome.
Yeah. I think that actually the original alchemists, the spiritual alchemists, that's what they did. Um, and the most powerful energy is actually the sexual drive. You try, so you could actually take that from the base of your spine or from the second chakra,
Mhm.
and you can raise that, and it's unbelievable the energy that's available there. That apparently that's like sheer creative energy.
Yeah, you can
Uh,
feel it coming up. I know what you're saying. When you have a sexual drive, that comes like it comes all the way up, and it's such a powerful thing. And you could take that and
you can consciously raise it, um, and then the sex drive disappears and becomes creative energy, and that's most likely that's probably what the real, the real alchemists do, yeah, because they can harness, they can work with those incredible energies and raise it within their system. It's not so much raising, it's transmuting it into a higher vibration, higher frequency. Yeah.
you say the highest
Uh,
frequency is love.
yeah, the problem with love is what does one mean when one says love, So I think there are levels of love that we have, so one can love your pet, I
Mm.
mean, or one can love God, or so yeah, so love is, dependent. It's probably with one word in the English language that's quite badly. It can mean so many things.
Could you
A lot of the
identify
time,
Daryl with saying that, you know, you are love?
that's what you read, and I suspect it's true. So love is a frequency of creation and the frequency of source,
Hmm.
but but it's got nothing to do with infatuation and wanting something from someone else, and there are many different levels of love, and I've woken, I've had dreams sort of almost in a kind of astral where the level of love, I'm calling it love because but it's almost like a total foreign emotion that it's nothing that I've ever had on the earth. So I think there's like really high levels of it, and you might find we're at the bottom of the spectrum, as humans,
Wow.
but we have access to it all. And I think that's the whole thing is if we're on Earth and we're not becoming, or if we're not experience ourselves as complete beings, we're wasting our time.
So what would you say to people listening saying, well, I hear what Daryl's saying, like, you know, I don't feel like I'm the complete being. What would you say? I want to be the complete being, Daryl. Like, you know.
Yeah, I think I would say, as I maybe mentioned last time, is forget the concepts of spirituality, forget even the word waking up and self-realization.
Mhm.
Go after love. Open your heart. Do whatever you can do to keep your heart open and keep your heart open as long as you can and as wide as you can, and then everything is. I think that's all we could ever ask for, and then we become love, and
Mhm.
then there's no need to talk about anything anymore.
We could just lose our language, right? And just be.
Yeah, I've yeah. Look, I'm that's not my daily experience as much as I'd love it to be. I mean,
Yeah, don't we all? Uh,
uh,
yeah, we're still having the human experience, right, Daryl?
yeah.
I mean, you still have
Yeah,
family.
it's there was a so when I came to it differently, I came through a traditional spiritual path as opposed to, so I started on you could call the gradual path. Whereas these days, the direct path is really the way to go. But so, on a gradual approach, one kind of it's all uh, purification and things like that. But I spent a lot of time working on emotions, and one of the problems with emotions is that as you work with them, they just keep it's like a never-ending thing. You can never get rid of. But so I worked with transmuting emotions for quite a while.
Hmm.
Then I went up one level, and I realized that actually it's not about emotions; it's actually about beliefs.
Oh,
So then the whole thing was to try and figure out, we've got all these subconscious beliefs, and then you have to try and why what belief am I holding that's not true, and most of our problems in our life, and one of the beliefs is that we're not realized or we need to integrate our spirituality. Those are also beliefs. But more recently, which has been very powerful, is polarities, is working with polarities, working with the victim perpetrator. So, why is it that some people get it easier and others, you can quite easily fall into a victim mentality. But we all hold both ends of the polarity. So we can never say, well, I'm a victim or I'm a, what we all hold both sides of polarity within us. So that's also good and evil, um, uh, inferior, superior. There are lots of these polarities, and it's a way of prying out things that you weren't actually certain you didn't know existed within you. But it's quite a powerful tool to use. And I know it goes against a lot of the teachings that you guys, but it is a very useful tool. Especially, I realized that I was playing. There were quite a few times when I was playing out the victim, and I was totally unaware of it. I was also playing out the inferiority, superiority polarity quite a lot, and this is like kind of and unaware of it. Um, so.
is this you're speaking from the essence that's looking at the character in the play playing the victim thing. You could actually see it like like you can see it playing out like as a movie, like watching the character Daryl go and play this victim. Is that what you're saying? You're actually previous to that you weren't aware that Daryl was out there doing this, and like was there space there between Daryl the character and that which is aware of it?
Yeah, so initially there was no space, so one didn't have the space to work with things. So
Huh?
you can actually only work with these things when you're holding a more unity consciousness
Yeah.
perspective,
Hmm.
because you can't. There's not, as you say, there's not enough space. You
Yeah.
can't see it from a distance, and then so even though we're not this mind body, well, I'm not going to say we're not this. I have a mind body, but I'm not the mind body. But it is an aspect of myself
Yes.
that I carry around with me, and and this mind body gives me experiences, and some of the experiences are not nice. I mean, some of them, So if one is not having any suffering in one's life.
Hmm.
Then what, you don't even have to look at the mind body, if there's no suffering. But if there's still suffering or
Hmm.
still, then one has to investigate, So, so one can still hold the position that that the infinite being, but at the same time, work needs to be done. Um, but it is a difficult thing because in order to wake up, you kind of also have to lose the self-improvement mindset.
Yeah. It's true. Because then you're saying you're coming from lack, right?
That's right. Yeah. So it's very paradoxical. So you're kind of not going to wake up while you're improving yourself.
Yeah, it'd be possible.
So the waking up is actually the realization that it wasn't necessary. I'm not that. But at the same time, there's work to be done, from my experience. Uh, and now logically, don't I can't explain that logically. Uh, but and it's not so much work to be done. It's more a question
Would
of
would you say it's
seeing
more
clearly.
more like integration, maybe like when somebody wakes up, they realize, well, I'm not Rob or I'm not Daryl, the character here. I realize I'm this, infinite space, this impersonal space of beingness, and I can see, that this is like a play that's happening here. And would you say it's more like integrating it into the character in the everyday? Like,
Yeah, well, we live the character.
yeah.
So when I'm going to work and I'm dealing with staff and that,
Mhm.
most of the time I'm playing the character. But I don't. The difference is I don't forget that I'm playing the character.
Right. You're
But
awake playing the character. Yeah.
yes, I'm awake playing the character. So I know I'm always playing the character, but I
Hmm.
still play it. But
Of course.
I mean that's what we're doing here.
Of
But
course you
the
do.
but the But the thing is, if the characters, if the story that in other words, if the character's bringing unnecessary sense, I mean, no one wants to experience pain
So
and
can you
suffering.
change, Daryl, can you change the script of the character then? If you said pain, can I just make it that the character's out there having fun all the time? Like, does the
Yeah, yeah,
character
you
have
can.
to
Yeah, yeah.
experience pain? Can he just go out and live on the fun frequency?
Well, so physical pain is slightly different to emotional pain, and
Right.
so I think it's very easy uh, to not have psychological. So that's the difference between psychological suffering. So psychological suffering to a large extent disappears, but one
Hmm.
could still have physical. A lot of people who are very awake have real problems with their bodies. I mean, it's actually more common than you think. I'm almost starting
Really?
to think so a lot, I've heard people, I mean, some of them have dementia, some have serious, I know of people with serious back problems. And I mean, so it's kind of not really the question you were asking, but I think it's important to distinguish between psychological suffering and physical suffering.
Yeah, I think
The
physical
physical
pain.
suffering can also be transcended.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we know physical. So the psychological, you can get, that one is not as hard to because it's like a lot of the psychological pain that's coming is people identifying with their limited thoughts or the thoughts telling them, that they're sick or they're not good enough, and they're identifying with the body saying, that's all I am is just this body, and then fear comes up and
Yeah,
all
you're
those things.
believing a story.
So if you don't believe the story,
Yeah,
you could
that's right.
wipe out that psychological, but the physical pain, that's just sensations coming from the body, right? Would you say
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Yes, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, so even with, I suppose, some psychological, so you can have emotional pain as well, which is a physical sensation.
Hmm.
I've heard it been described, they say, like, um, I think emotions are just sensations with a story attached to them.
I like that. That's pretty good.
In other words, that emotions of yeah. So emotions can be just sensations. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this is the thing is everyone wakes up differently, and I think it's one of the reasons why there's so much confusion because some people wake up and they lose themselves completely. Ramana Maharshi, I think I mean, he's I mean, he self disappeared instantly. There was nothing, no integration, there was nothing. Um, but the thing is, I think everyone has a different role to play in life on Earth. So he had a role to play as a guru to inspire many millions of people, and was his role that he played. So and he played it from the highest perspective. Um, but yeah, most of us are. One has to be, to just lose, to have no sense of self whatsoever. I mean, you need a sense of self to operate in the world.
Right.
And I'd be surprised if there are many people who have absolutely no sense of self.
Yeah, I think there's anyone on the planet right now that has no sense of self.
Well, if you're on the planet right now, the chances are you've got a sense of self. It might be very small, but there would be some sense of self.
Hmm.
Uh, There's another thing which I could bring up if since we kind of is we have an incredible capacity to delude ourselves as well.
Okay.
And and I think it's very important that one is aware of it because it's easy it's kind of like the ego when it's lost everything, that's its kind of last graft. It will try and it will delude the in other words, yeah, it would we can delude ourselves and it happens all the time. It probably happens to everyone to some extent. It's
Mm.
almost the last thing that one has to see through. And the we, and the final surrender is probably realizing that, where the final letting go is you realize that because we're up against some quite serious forces, we're human, so we've got the whole human. I know it's talking now from a lower level, but if I don't like talking about karma, but we all or samskaras. You've got the whole human psyche that just being a human, Uh, so it's not as even though ultimately you can say we're not humans, but yeah. So are you familiar with samskaras? I mean, they just
Yeah. Yep.
um, you could say conditioning,
Right.
energetic conditioning, mental conditioning.
Right.
So, as if one identifies as a male, you take on some scars with male humans. If one identifies as a human, you take on all the human characteristics. If one identifies as an American or South African, you take on those forces. You become susceptible to those forces. I'm not saying you take them on. It is always optional, but you need to be very, very awake to be aware of it. So you've got these that are all affecting us every day.
Hmm.
Um, that I had this teacher once said that either identify with everything or with nothing
Yeah.
for that reason.
Wow. Because of the
Because as soon
samskaras.
as
Yeah.
yeah, you'll take you it's in the ether. It's energetic in nature. That's why people herd mentality and things like that. It's because of the strong identification bonds they have.
So what you were mentioning the final surrender that one would see, after, because it's saying we could delude ourselves, the ego or whatever, it can delude itself. So what would you say is the final surrender?
The final surrender is actually, it's you surrender to source in that, and it's you realize that you know there's nothing that I can do. There's no practice that I can do. There's no integration. There's nothing. It's like a final surrender. It's in other words, I suspect. I mean, I'm not. You surrender your very existence to source. And only at that point are you starting to see through, because we'll always be holding some illusions, because we fool ourselves.
Could you say the final surrender, Daryl, is that you are source?
I think you kind of first have to surrender to source to become source.
Well,
But
The character Rob or the character
yeah,
Daryl has to disappear,
that's right, totally. Yeah,
and then there's source.
there is. It's not like I am source, or yeah, it's not like we are source.
It's not like Daryl is source or
It's
Rob
source.
is source.
That's right.
Yeah, that's almost like Daryl was never real anyway. He's just a collection of thoughts
Yes.
and a
Yeah.
story. That's all he was. He was never here. It was only just this. It was almost like a case of mistaken identity. Like, I was identified with Daryl or Rob, but Daryl or Rob is not real. It's seen that
Yeah.
it's not real. It's just a collection of thoughts, that there is no separation. It's always just been this infinite being, this consciousness that's,
The
this
thing is,
almost presence.
yeah, so yeah, the first realization is that. I know deep down, not intellectually, there's a deep knowing that I'm not this body mind.
Okay. Hmm.
But you never get to the point where you can say, look, I'm not this body mind, but I am that. It's that whole, in other words, so a lot of the time is uh, so it's more of a question of being not being something than being something, because we can never know what we are. I think what we are is almost unknowable.
Yes, you're
So
right.
all we can know at a conceptual level is what we are not. So if
Yeah.
you kind of just keep going up the level, you keep going up. I'm not my body mind. And eventually you say, well, then you start thinking I'm awareness. And it's almost like it's not that we are awareness, it's just there is awareness. So
Hmm.
then I'm not awareness. And then you can slowly move up that scale, you know. Um, yeah, so I mean that's what the great teachers say. It's unknowable. And I think it's from that perspective. We can just know what we're not what we are.
Yeah. So we're not the commentator. We're not the experiencer.
Yeah,
We're not the
yeah,
thinker. When we erase all of those, or even when we erase language, like if I just change the dialogue to Japanese or Chinese right now, like what's left?
yeah,
The unknowable this. It's just
yeah,
that. So I guess the
yeah.
final realization would be it's just this without words, right? Because if I take the language away, the dialogue, and I mean it's almost
So
like
I
when you were a
think
baby, it's almost like when you were a baby when you were 2 years old. Like you didn't like know language or anything. There was just this awakeness. I don't know, this aliveness. What I don't know what to say. It's just this without not knowing anything, really.
yeah. So now it's kind of drawing. A lot of people talk about the void. I personally haven't experienced the void.
Hmm.
But the void, from what I understand, is there's just there's no subjects and objects.
Hmm.
It's just so there's a transition through the void that people say from so it's emptiness to fullness, in the end. So the emptiness becomes fullness. So in other words, it becomes I'm not, and then it's like actually there's
What's
just
left? I would say what's left after what's not. Like once you
yeah,
eliminate
that's
everything,
right.
you eliminate the
It,
observer, you eliminate the
yeah,
commentator, the thinker, you
yeah.
eliminate everything. What's left? Everything. I mean, I don't know. You're
Yeah,
present.
yeah, I mean that's now we're conceptualizing things.
Yeah, it's
But
non-conceptual. It's non-conceptual
yeah,
awareness is what it
yeah,
is.
yeah,
Non-conceptual awareness. It's just
yeah,
because there's no
uh,
you can't put a concept on it. I mean,
yeah. Well, there's no
that
subject.
that which is trying to find what it
Yeah,
is it itself. So how do you,
yeah.
right?
But definitely for me included, and I'm talking to myself here as well as many other people. But it's actually the spiritual path comes down to love, and I think I mean that's really what we're after. So I mean it's I think and that's something that we can cultivate. I think. And I think, to tell someone that they can't do anything is very disempowering. Whereas to say, go for the love, wherever you can find it,
Yeah.
uh, that's empowerment.
It feels good to be
And that
empowered
improves
though. I mean,
lives.
people like to feel empowered, they don't want to feel
Yeah.
disempowered.
Yes. Yeah.
Feels good.
That does.
Just lifing. And then there's you ever heard of, well, I don't know what your experience has been, like it's just never happened.
Yeah.
Say
You
something
talk
about
about,
that. Say something about that. Nothing's ever happened.
yeah. So the past is really just, it's interesting this because everyone understands that you can only live in the present. You can't live in the past and you can't live in the future. But just because you have a memory of something in the past doesn't mean that it actually happened.
A lot of people going, wow, right now.
Uh, every instant you create yourself and your world anew. So when you're creating your world, you're creating your past as well. You're creating the memory of so you create the world and the memory of the world at the same time. Yeah.
Yes.
So and when there's no individuals, there's no sequence, there's no sequence. There's not like one instant becomes another instant. There's no sequence. It's just a
It's all fresh every time.
all fresh, all new, and yeah. But it's one with awakening, one gets a sense of that. Uh, that's why you can change your past because life doesn't march from the past to the future. The past is just a concept.
So it's true. You can be, do, or have anything you want.
Yeah, you can. But it's very easy for me to say that, and it's another thing to to put it into practice.
Why do you think
Uh,
that is?
you truly believe it. So in other words, I think I believe it, but do I truly believe it? You know?
Yeah, it's the vibration you're giving off. It's not the actual words or what you're trying to delude yourself in saying, but what I mean, where really, what do you really believe deep down? Like, what's your vibration? What do you really know?
Yeah,
And
I mean, I
that's
think
what's going to
this is one of my
manifest. Go ahead.
sorry, I was going to say this is one of my problems. You know, we kind of think we know too much, and it's part of that deluding ourselves, you know, that
Hmm.
I saw this somewhere and it was so good. I think it comes from Gnosticism. So there's two extremes in life. The one extreme is you're a complete materialist. You
Hmm.
believe that everything, that physical matter creates consciousness. So you're a complete materialist. In other words, there's nothing, if I can't see it and measure it, it doesn't exist. And then at the other end, you you we we complete nothingness. In other words, so the one's totally physical and the other one's totally subtle. And and they are you can say they are both, I'm not going to say incorrect, but it's you might possibly when the Buddha was talking about the middle road, I think that's possibly what in other words, you can't go down that side, and you also can't go down the side um, of everything. The whole world becomes too ethereal. You know, so you take the middle path down between the two. In other words, you embrace physicality and you embrace spirituality.
Right.
You embrace the two, the middle path down. Um,
It's good. So and I was reading through your book not too long ago, and I love the way you did your book because you really lay it out the whole journey of, of spirituality and how it came about. Like you said, it wasn't like the more of the direct path that a lot of people are, many are experiencing today. Yours was a little different. Maybe say something about that path versus the direct path and what consciousness is doing or what you see.
yeah, I think in the past the gradual path was required,
Hmm.
uh, but now where we are today with the amount of people waking up and with the accessibility of waking up, you can one can all one requires is just have the intention to wake up, and you can directly go there. So it's not necessary to spend years and years meditating,
Hmm.
and not that that's gonna. I'm sure that there'll be a lot of it will be beneficial. I'm not saying one mustn't do it, but in the times that we're living now, it appears that there's a great waking up, and all one requires is the intention. And if one has the intention, it will become your experience. So, whereas maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, things were different. One took the gradual path. It's not necessary anymore.
And then you mentioned something earlier. Once you wake up, that's just the beginning.
Yeah, so I feel that quite strongly. It's an ever increasing, the awareness that we grow into is ever expanding and ever increasing. And the waking up is the start of the journey. It's the first movement from matter to spirit. So you can't move to spirit until you've woken up. And waking up is also relative. Not everyone wakes up the same, and people wake up at different. Some awaken more than others. But I sense that the journey into spirit, and as you call effortless being, as we are
Yeah.
human beings, and beings live in spirit world. We are spirit beings, and that journey starts with waking up, and that's the movement. That's the threshold from matter into spirit. So that's just something I suspect. I can't say it with any. We're discovering more of what we are.
That's beautiful. So say something about the book, just that in case anybody's listening, they wanted to read about the book that you wrote.
I wrote a book called Transcending Me. I called it Transcending Me. Well, the subtitle is A Spiritual Journey. But it's transcending me because it's transcending the personal self or the ego self. Um, and that is what waking up is. It's transcending your personal identity into a new frontier. But it's not transcending and us and then even though our physical bodies are and our mind bodies, you could say, are illusory, they are still very real. So you could say it's transcending and including that aspect of ourselves, which is our personal self. So we've effectively just become a bigger self. So I started spirituality quite a few years ago, about 2000, and I went on a traditional path. I followed a guru. I did that for quite a few years. Uh, I had some ups and downs on the way. I kind of lost spirituality for a while, and then I got back into it, and I had my waking up experience in 2021. And that book basically chronicles that journey that I took. And yeah, and it's available on Amazon if anyone would like to read it.
The name of the book?
Transcending Me, A Spiritual Journey.
Yeah, I read through a lot of it, and I recommend it to anyone. It's really was uplifting, eye-opening, what you could see there, and you were really detailed in that journey. And you know, I think it's going to benefit a lot of people. I hope people go ahead and look at that book. I think it was very helpful, especially those that are, that are seeking out there, the any seekers out there. And then even I would even say even for those that are self-realized, I thought it was good as well. You know, some good takeaways in there. Well, what's next for Daryl? The mind always comes in. Let me ask Daryl what's next for him.
We'll have to talk about that next time.
Yeah, okay, we could do
Yeah.
that. We could do that next time. Yeah, I guess I did keep you on a while. Time just flies. It was just you know, no time, but you know what I mean. It was
It's been
just
lovely connecting with you.
yes.
It's been a lovely connection.
Yes, it's been very enjoyable, and I'm glad that this just came about. And I feel like I'm developing a friendship with you. Um, yeah, so I mean, I'm very thankful and appreciative of you taking the time to share, and I think many people will benefit. I know I have. So thank you. Appreciate
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah.
Okay.